The purpose of this video is to train our photographers on the basics of night shots. Night shots are photos, both still images and virtual images, taken at dusk or in the early evening. These images are taken by many high-profile interior photographers and can be very striking and flattering to the home. However, night shots can be very tricky to get right, and you may have to spend extra time to make sure all the shots are in focus and without motion blur. Before attempting to shoot a night shots package, you must first have a fluent understanding of shooting tours in the daytime. You will need a tripod on all night shot images, both for your stills and your virtuals. Shooting stills with a tripod will require a quick release plate, which came with your tripod or can be purchased at any photography store. You won't need your flash for night shots. If you try to use your flash, you'll overexpose the foreground and underexpose the home, resulting in a dark home, as is illustrated in these images. When you arrive at the home, make sure all lights are turned on. While the same goes for day shots, the extra lights make a big difference at night. Having the lights on will make the home seem more inviting, while having the lights off makes the home seem forbidding. There are several settings that you will adjust during your night shoot. You'll be shooting in P mode and adjusting your ISO, noise reduction, white balance, and exposure compensation settings. The settings we will be discussing are basic rules for shooting night shots. Once you become familiar with these rules, you can experiment with different settings to improve your image quality even further. For your first few night shoots, you'll use the P mode setting on your shooting dial. Once you become comfortable with this setting, you can use the A, S, or M modes. The ISO setting is the sensitivity of the camera's sensor to the light present. It serves a similar function as film speed did in 35mm cameras. Increasing the ISO allows you to take photos with less light, but can also create grainier images. These photos illustrate the differences in ISO. If you look closely at the image on the right, you'll see that the photo appears grainier, or in other words, has more noise. For night shots, we recommend shooting with ISO settings between 200 and 400 for most images, and 800 if needed. We do not recommend that you shoot at ISO 1600 or higher. As you saw in the previous images, higher ISO settings result in more noise in the image. Turning on your noise reduction setting can help combat that noise, but also reduces some detail in the image. Therefore, it should only be used with high ISO settings and as needed. To change your noise reduction setting, click on the menu button on your camera and scroll to the camera icon. Scroll down to Noise Reduction and press the OK button. Change the setting to on or off and press the OK button again. Since you will not be using your flash, you may need to adjust your white balance settings for the different type of natural and artificial light. In most situations, you can use the auto white balance setting, but may need to adjust your setting for various changes in lighting. Here are some examples of how the wrong kind of white balance can affect your image. Since these shots were all taken outdoors with mostly natural light, the artificial light settings, such as fluorescent and incandescent, have a negative effect on the image. The most frequently adjusted setting during a night shoot will be exposure compensation. You will use exposure compensation to adjust for fading light as the sun goes down, or changes in light from the various outdoor lighting situations of each home. Start with your exposure compensation at 0.0 and adjust from there. When adjusting your exposure compensation, watch out for hotspots. These are parts of an image where lights are so bright that the image is washed out. Most cameras will flash hotspots on your LCD screen preview, so you'll know before you move your camera if you need to shoot that image again. Here are some examples of how different exposure compensation settings can affect an image. Watch as the image gets brighter as the exposure compensation goes from negative to positive. Do you find that you're getting blurry images from the camera moving while you press the shutter? Use the timer feature to eliminate camera movement. If you're having a hard time getting the full image in focus, especially parts of the image that are closer than the rest of the image, you can adjust your aperture or f-stop to a higher number. You'll need to change the shooting mode dial to A before you can do this. Once you become familiar with shooting night shots in P mode, start experimenting with A, aperture, S, shutter speed, and M, manual modes. These will allow you more flexibility in correctly exposing your images than using exposure compensation only, and can often produce even better images than our basic rules. We'll quickly review the effect of these two settings. Shutter speed is the length of time your shutter stays open. The longer your shutter is open, the more light is allowed into your camera, and the brighter your image will be. The left image had a longer shutter speed than the image on the right. Aperture is the measure of how open your lens is and is exposed in f-stops. The higher your f-stop, the smaller your aperture and the darker your image is. The left image has a smaller f-stop than the image on the right. The most important thing about night shooting is to practice. Practice will help you know how to adjust your camera, and familiarity with your settings will help your shoots go more quickly. Feel free to shoot as many practice tours of night shots before you shoot a paid tour. Just ask your client manager to put a practice tour in your queue. We'd like all photographers to shoot at least one practice tour before beginning to shoot night shots, if you've never done it before. If you'd like additional training on night shots, or need some practice tours put into your queues, please contact your client manager.